The sirens hadn't even stopped. Tehran's sky was still burning, a torn canvas of smoke and flashing red, when the name appeared on every trembling screen. Ali Khamenei. No title, no honorific, just the name, and beneath it, a single word that refused to look real. Dead. Phones vibrated in the dark. Windows rattled. Somewhere, glass kept falling long after the blast had faded. The night did not return to silence. It fractured into whispers, into breaths held too long, into eyes staring at televisions as if the images might correct themselves if watched closely enough. The supreme leader of Iran, gone. There was no prepared speech, no solemn procession. Only the residue of impact, concrete dust hanging in the air, electricity flickering, a skyline interrupted by smoke where there should have been certainty. The strike had come swift, coordinated, precise. Israeli and American forces, officials would later say, a calculated operation, a message written in fire. But in that first hour, no one spoke in sentences, only fragments. Is it confirmed? They wouldn't. It can't be him. Yet it was his compound, his security detail, his schedule, his silence. For decades, Ali Khamenei had stood as the axis of the Islamic Republic, immovable, unyielding, a figure whose authority seemed stitched into the walls of Tehran itself. He had survived wars, sanctions, uprisings, internal fractures. He had outlasted presidents, generals, rivals. His image hung in classrooms, in offices, in homes. His voice had echoed through mosques and state television with the steadiness of ritual. And now the broadcasts replayed the same burning frame. No body shone, no ceremonial confirmation. Only officials speaking in tightened tones, acknowledging what could no longer be hidden. Iran confirmed it. The supreme leader had been killed in an attack carried out by Israel and the United States. The words landed heavier than the explosion. Crowds began forming before dawn. Not organized, not yet. Just people pulled by gravity toward the center of something they did not understand. Some wept openly. Others stood rigid, as if grief might be interpreted as weakness. Revolutionary Guard units moved quickly, sealing districts, controlling movement, scanning faces for something: panic, anger, betrayal. Inside government corridors, doors closed harder than usual. Succession was no longer theoretical. The assembly of experts, the clerical establishment, the military command, all thrust into a reality they had rehearsed only in private conversations. There had always been contingency plans. There are always contingency plans. But plans written in ink behave differently when history is written in smoke. Across the region, the shock rippled outward. In Tel Aviv, officials remained measured. In Washington, statements were careful, deliberate, almost clinical. The strike, they implied, was strategic, necessary, preventative, a response to escalating threats, a decisive act in a long shadow war that had never truly been secret. But strategy does not erase consequence. In Tehran, murals bearing Khamenei's image became gathering points. Candles appeared, then chants. Some voices demanded revenge before sunrise. Others spoke of martyrdom. The narrative shifted by the hour, from shock to fury, from disbelief to defiance. State media framed him as fallen in defense of sovereignty, as a leader struck down by foreign aggression. The symbolism was immediate and potent. He had ruled since 1989, a lifetime in power, an era defined by tension with the West, by nuclear negotiations that rose and collapsed, by protests that surged and were suppressed. To his supporters, he was guardian of revolution. To his critics, architect of repression. To the global stage, he was an enduring constant in a volatile region. And constants are not supposed to vanish overnight. The strike itself remained shrouded in layers of conflicting detail. Drones, some said. Precision-guided munitions, others insisted. Intelligence so exact it bordered on surgical. The compound's defenses had been formidable. The perimeter impenetrable. Until it wasn't. Speculation moved faster than facts. Had there been internal leaks? Was the timing symbolic? Was it retaliation for something unseen by the public? Every unanswered question deepened the sense that this was not merely an assassination, but a pivot point. Markets trembled before sunrise in distant capitals. Oil prices spiked in anticipation of retaliation. Diplomats worked phones that would not stop ringing. Embassies reviewed evacuation plans. Military units shifted into heightened readiness. Words like escalation, deterrence, regional war surfaced in headlines before breakfast. But inside Iran, the story was more intimate. Families gathered around radios the way previous generations once had during revolutions and invasions. Parents tried to explain to children why soldiers were suddenly visible on streets that had felt ordinary just hours before. The city's usual rhythm, traffic horns, vendors calling out, the murmur of daily life, moved cautiously, as if unsure whether normality was still permitted. Ali Khamenei had not been merely a political leader. He had been a symbol layered into decades of national identity. His sermons, his decrees, his very silhouette had shaped the ideological spine of the state. Removing such a figure does not create silence. It creates a vacuum. And vacuums demand to be filled. Rumors swelled of imminent retaliation, of missile batteries being readied, of alliances activating quietly in the background. Israel fortified its defenses. American bases across the region braced for the possibility that this single strike might ignite something far broader than its planners intended. And yet, in the early hours, what lingered most was not the geopolitics. It was the image. Smoke above Tehran. A name on a screen. A certainty undone. The sirens eventually stopped. But the quiet that followed was not peace. It was the kind of stillness that comes before decisions are made. Decisions that redraw maps, that harden narratives, that transform grief into policy. In a modest apartment overlooking the city, an elderly man stared at a portrait of Khamenei on his wall and whispered a prayer under his breath. Across town, a young protester watched the same news and felt a different surge. Not mourning, not celebration, but the realization that the future had cracked open in ways no one could yet measure. The night had started with explosions. By morning, it had become something else entirely. The crater was still warm. Concrete peeled outward like torn paper. Steel rods twisted in directions that made no architectural sense. Security walls reduced to fragments that glittered under floodlights, while men in uniform walked through the smoke as if rehearsing disbelief. A compound once described as impenetrable. Now open, who knew? State television showed nothing for hours. Just looping recitations, old speeches, archival footage of him seated beneath heavy curtains, speaking slowly, deliberately, as though time itself answered to him. No live camera, no coffin, only delay. Phones kept lighting up in the dark. Messages forwarded without punctuation. Screenshots of foreign headlines. Clips from international networks declaring what domestic anchors would not yet say aloud. If that is true, 3 words, everywhere. A woman in the north of the city stood on her balcony watching helicopters circle and wondered whether grief is supposed to arrive immediately or whether it waits, respectful, for confirmation. She had lived through the war with Iraq as a child. She remembered sirens then too. This sounded different, closer. Inside Parliament, voices rose behind closed doors. Not speeches, arguments, sharp, interrupted. A name proposed, another dismissed. The word succession spoken without comfort. It had always been theoretical, a clause in a constitution few expected to see, activated by fire. Now it was urgent. Oil markets jolted before sunrise. Numbers climbing on digital boards thousands of miles away. Traders staring at graphs while Tehran stared at smoke. The distance between consequence and origin collapsing into a single headline. Retaliation? No answer. Just speculation layered on speculation, like dust settling on ruins. Military convoys moved before dawn. Not announced. Not denied. Engines low. Headlights off. A choreography of readiness. In the south, missile batteries shifted position. In the north, air defenses recalibrated. Television still silent. Why no image? Foreign correspondents spoke in careful tones. Strategic strike. High-value target. Coordinated operation. Words designed to sound controlled. Clinical. Necessary. Necessary for whom? In Tel Aviv, shelters were checked. In Washington, briefings ran long past midnight. Advisors leaning over tables lit by maps. Red zones. Arrows. Possibilities. And in Tehran, an old cleric sat alone in a dim corridor, hands folded, staring at the floor tiles as if they might provide instruction. He had pledged allegiance decades ago. What now? Crowds gathered not in fury at first, but in confusion. Some carried his portrait. Some carried nothing. They waited for someone to tell them what this meant. The Revolutionary Guard units positioned themselves carefully, not too aggressive, not too distant. Control the moment, or the moment controls you. A long sentence began forming across the region. Alliances, militias, borders, red lines, but no one finished it, because the end was unclear. A teenager refreshed his phone again, and again, and again. Confirmed, one foreign outlet declared. Still no domestic confirmation. Then, finally, a statement. Brief, formal. Words chosen with surgical restraint. The supreme leader had been killed in an act of aggression by Israel and the United States. An investigation underway. A promise of response. Response. The word hung there, heavy. Funeral plans were whispered before bodies were displayed. Black banners printed before official mourning periods announced. The machinery of symbolism moved faster than the machinery of clarity. Was there a successor ready? A council? A power struggle hidden beneath the rhetoric of unity? Inside the assembly chamber, eyes avoided each other. Loyalty measured in glances. Futures recalculated in silence. The skyline still scarred. A child asked his father whether the war had started. The father hesitated too long before answering no, because he did not know. Missile defense systems in neighboring countries activated drills. Diplomats canceled flights. Social media flooded with predictions. Some triumphant, some terrified, most uncertain. A long war without a battlefield had just found one, or had it. The attack was precise. That much was undeniable. Intelligence refined, timing deliberate. But precision does not prevent aftermath. It only narrows the point of impact. Everything after expands. In one apartment, a television flickered with footage of crowds chanting his name. In another, the same footage played muted, watched with unreadable expressions. Mourning and calculation occupying the same city block. If he is gone, who speaks for the revolution? If he is gone, who commands the response? If he is gone, the sentence refuses to settle. Night turned into morning without relief. The call to prayer rose through a city that did not feel the same. Familiar melody. Unfamiliar weight. An era defined by one man's authority had ended not with illness, not with ceremony, but with impact. Smoke, flash, silence. And now waiting. Waiting for missiles. Waiting for negotiations. waiting for something that has not yet declared its shape. A general somewhere studies a map. A diplomat drafts a sentence and deletes it. A protester watches the sky, and on every screen, the image replays. The burning compound, the broken walls, the idea that permanence was an illusion all along. No conclusion arrives. Only tension. Thick, unfinished. The television flickers. Volume low. No one dares turn it up. A red banner crawls across the bottom of the screen, repeating the same sentence over and over, as if repetition might make it safer to swallow. The anchor's face is steady, almost too steady. Behind him, an image of smoke, frozen, mid-rise. Cut. Crowd footage. Cut again. Archive speech from years ago. His voice slower than memory. Deliberate, unhurried, as if tomorrow were guaranteed. But tomorrow feels thin now. In a kitchen somewhere in western Tehran, tea grows cold. A spoon rests untouched inside a glass cup. The woman holding the remote keeps switching channels, as though one of them might suddenly say, "Mistake, misunderstanding." He is alive. None do? Outside, traffic sounds wrong. Not louder, not quieter. Just wrong. Drivers honk, then stop, then honk again, as if unsure whether impatience is still allowed. A motorbike races past too fast. Someone shouts. Then silence again. A message arrives. Stay home tonight. No explanation. Another message. Have you heard? Everyone has heard. State television shows a black ribbon in the corner now. Subtle. Small. A symbol that feels heavier than the blast itself. The camera lingers on government buildings lit in white and green. Flags at half-mast. Guards standing straighter than usual. No close-ups. No tears on screen. In a narrow alley, two men argue in whispers. One says, "This cannot go unanswered." The other says nothing at all, just keeps looking at the sky like he expects something else to fall from it. A single helicopter circles again. Too low. Windows tremble. A child presses his hands against his ears, even though there is no siren anymore. Somewhere else, in a living room with the curtains half drawn, an old photograph is taken down from a wall. Not destroyed, just placed face down on a table. The gesture is small, almost invisible. But it feels loud. Why tonight? No one answers. Phones glow in the dark like scattered embers. People scroll without reading. Images blend together. Smoke. Rubble. A portrait framed in black. Foreign leaders speaking in distant languages. Subtitles sliding across faces that seem very far away from this street, this apartment, this unfinished cup of tea. If it spreads, the sentence trails off in a voice message no one replies to. In another district, candles appear along a sidewalk. Not many, just a few. Someone places flowers. Someone else removes them. The act itself feels fragile, like stepping onto thin ice. The power cuts for a second. Just a second. Enough to make everyone look up at once. When the lights return, no one laughs. Inside a government building, doors close softly. Footsteps echo down a corridor that suddenly feels longer than before. Papers shuffle. Pens tap against desks. A portrait still hangs at the end of the hall. For now, in a small shop, the owner pulls down the metal shutter earlier than usual. He doesn't explain why. He doesn't need to. His neighbor across the street does the same. The sound of metal scraping concrete rolls through the block like a signal. Not official, but understood. A young woman types a message and deletes it. Types again. Deletes again. Finally, she sends only one word. Careful. Careful of what? No one specifies. Television replays the strike footage again. The distant flash. The plume rising into a sky that looked ordinary just moments before. It is always the same angle. The same frame. as if the world narrowed to that one perspective and refuses to widen again. Someone laughs suddenly. Too sharp, too loud. It stops quickly. The air feels charged, like before a storm that might not come, but might also arrive without warning. People listen for sounds that aren't there yet. Distant thunder mistaken for something else. A door slamming down the hall mistaken for impact. The anchor speaks again. Measured, careful. A phrase about unity. Another about patience. The words float, not landing anywhere solid. In the corner of the room, a grandfather clears his throat and says nothing. His grandchildren stare at the screen without understanding the weight of what they are watching. They sense it, though. The tension in the adults' shoulders. The way conversations stop when the news grows louder. A notification buzzes. Then another. Then dozens. Maps shared. Predictions whispered. Routes discussed. If you need to leave. If roads close. If, always if, a car alarm begins wailing somewhere outside and doesn't stop for a long time. No one moves to silence it. The sound blends into the background, becoming part of the night's new language. The moon hangs above the city, indifferent. Smoke still lingers where the compound stood. The television keeps talking. But in the room, no one does. Not really. They watch. They wait. They breathe quietly, as if the air itself might be listening. And somewhere beyond the skyline, beyond the glow of the city lights, beyond the reach of the cameras replaying the same burning image, something else is already moving. Unseen, unannounced, unfinished. The screen goes dark for a second, then comes back. Maybe it was just the signal. Maybe not. A reporter stands outside a government building, wind pulling at her scarf, speaking in a voice that sounds steady, but not entirely anchored. She says the situation is under control. She says security forces are deployed. She says more information will follow. Will it? Behind her, lights flicker in windows that usually go dark at this hour. Shadows move across curtains. Someone opens a window, then closes it quickly. No one knows what is happening behind those walls. Not really. A man refreshes his phone again. The same headline, the same photograph, the same uncertainty wrapped inside firm-looking sentences. He reads it twice. It still feels unreal. Maybe it is incomplete. Maybe something is being withheld. Across town, a group gathers in a dim apartment. Tea poured, but barely touched. They speak in fragments. Could it have been prevented? Was he warned? Did anyone see it coming? No one answers fully. The questions hover, unanswered, like smoke that refuses to clear. If that is true, if state television shows a meeting already in progress. Officials seated in a row. Faces composed. Too composed. One of them blinks too slowly. Another adjusts papers that don't seem to need adjusting. Is that fear? Or just fatigue? Outside, the air carries a strange quiet. Not silence, just restraint. As if the city is holding back something it cannot yet name. Cars move slower. Conversations end abruptly when strangers pass too close. It could be nothing. It could be everything. A mother pulls her child closer while walking down the street. She isn't sure why. Instinct, perhaps. The child asks if school will be open tomorrow. She says yes, but she isn't certain. In a small office lit by a single lamp, someone drafts a statement and deletes half of it. The wording feels too strong, then too weak, then too certain. He types again. According to initial reports, deletes that too. There are no initial reports that feel solid enough to lean on. Messages circulate claiming retaliation is imminent. Others insist diplomacy is already happening somewhere unseen. Screenshots of unverified posts spread faster than corrections. Maybe those are rumors. Maybe not. No one knows who to trust in the first hours after something like this. Certainty becomes suspicious. Confidence sounds artificial. A single question keeps returning. Was this the end of something? Or the beginning? In one neighborhood, people gather around a parked car with the radio turned up. The announcer's voice cracks for just a moment before regaining composure. He repeats the official line. He avoids speculation. But speculation is everywhere. A woman whispers that she heard there were warnings days ago. A man insists it was sudden. Another shakes his head and says, "We will never know the full story." He might be right. In the distance, a siren starts again. Not the same tone as before. Or maybe it is? It is hard to tell now. A young student stares at the ceiling of his room, scrolling through updates that contradict each other. Some claim additional strikes. Some deny them. He types a message to a friend. "Do you think this changes things?" 3 dots appear. Disappear. No reply. Perhaps everyone is waiting for something clearer. A face. A ceremony. A visible sign that this is real and not some digital hallucination replayed too many times. State television cuts to footage of black-clad mourners gathering. The camera angle is distant. Safe. It avoids the edges where confusion might show. The anchor's voice lowers. Martyr. The word is used carefully. Repeated. But even repetition does not remove doubt. Some people bow their heads. Others look at the screen with eyes that search for something else. Contradiction? Proof? Reassurance? If that is truly what happened, if there are no missing pieces, if this is not just the part we are allowed to see, in another district, a shopkeeper debates whether to close early again tomorrow. He stands in his doorway watching the street as if the pavement itself might offer a sign. Business feels irrelevant tonight. He locks up anyway. The sky above Tehran is clearer now, smoke thinning, stars faintly visible through the haze. It looks almost normal. That is what unsettles people the most. How can something so large happen, and the skies still look the same? A television panel begins to form. Commentators seated apart from one another, speaking carefully, circling around words instead of stepping into them. They talk about resilience, about unity, about patience. They avoid prediction, perhaps because prediction feels dangerous now. In a quiet room, an elderly woman fingers prayer beads and whispers under her breath. Her lips move steadily, but her eyes drift toward the door each time a sound echoes down the hallway. She does not know what she is listening for. None of them do. A notification lights up another phone. Unconfirmed reports. Always unconfirmed. Always partial. Someone somewhere might know the full picture. Behind a heavy door. Behind a guarded gate. Behind a screen no one else can see. But here, in living rooms and narrow streets and dim stairwells, there is only uncertainty layered over shock. It could calm. It could escalate. It could stay suspended like this for days. No one says it out loud, but everyone senses it. The ground feels slightly less solid than it did yesterday. And maybe that is the real aftermath. Not the blast, not the headline, but the thinness beneath everything that once felt fixed. A man stands outside a small grocery shop. He doesn't go in. His phone is tilted toward the streetlight because the brightness is too low and the headline is still loading. The spinning circle turns, stops, turns again. He waits. Behind him, the metal shutter of the shop is halfway down. The owner inside pretends to rearrange boxes, but he is listening too. Everyone is listening. The headline finishes loading. He reads it once. Then again, he doesn't react. Not outwardly. He just slips the phone into his pocket and keeps standing there as if something else might happen on the pavement in front of him. Nothing does. A delivery truck passes. Too fast. Somewhere nearby, someone drops a crate of bottles. Glass shatters. Both men flinch. Only bottles. Maybe, In a narrow apartment upstairs, a young woman sits on the floor with her back against the couch. Her television is on mute. The captions scroll. She watches the words instead of the images. It feels safer that way. Killed. Strike. Response. The words look different without sound. Less dramatic. More final. She turns the volume up for a second. The anchor's voice is steady, almost gentle. Too gentle. She turns it down again. Her neighbor knocks on the wall once. Just once. A signal. Are you watching too? She knocks back. Outside, a stray cat darts across the street as headlights sweep over the asphalt. The city hasn't stopped. It never does, completely. But something in the air feels misaligned, like furniture moved slightly in the dark. At a bus stop, 3 teenagers huddle around a single phone. They argue about whether the footage is real. One says it looks edited. Another says it came from an official source. The third just keeps refreshing. It can't be that simple, one mutters. Simple. Nothing feels simple. An old man sits on a plastic chair outside his building, the same spot he occupies every evening. Tonight, he is alone. Usually, there are others. Tonight, they stayed inside. He stares at the empty street like he is waiting for someone to explain what happened in plain language. No one does. A motorcycle slows down near the corner. 2 riders. They don't speak. They don't need to. The city hums beneath them, low and uneasy. A woman at a bakery counts change wrong twice before realizing it. Her customer doesn't correct her. He just takes the bread and leaves without meeting her eyes. Television screens glow behind curtains. Some show crowds forming. Some show officials speaking. Some show nothing at all, just a frozen frame, signal interrupted. In one living room, a portrait on the wall is still hanging straight. In another, it has already been taken down. Not destroyed. Just leaned against the wall behind a chair. Quiet adjustments, small movements. On a rooftop, a boy stands with his hands in his pockets, looking toward the part of the skyline where smoke had risen hours earlier. It's almost invisible now, just a darker shade against the night. He wonders if it will still be there tomorrow. His phone buzzes. He ignores it. Inside a taxi, the driver has the radio on low. The announcer's voice trembles for a fraction of a second before stabilizing. The driver glances at his rearview mirror, as if expecting the passenger to say something profound. The passenger says nothing. They drive past a billboard with a familiar face on it. Still smiling, still intact. For now, at a small cafe that usually stays open late, chairs are stacked earlier than usual. The owner wipes down tables that are already clean. He checks his phone between each wipe. The news updates. Not much changes. Still confirmed. Still uncertain. In a narrow corridor inside a government office, a cleaner pushes a cart slowly past closed doors. She doesn't know what is happening inside those rooms. She only knows the lights are still on long after they usually go dark. She keeps walking. At an intersection, traffic lights change from red to green to red again. Cars hesitate before moving. A driver taps the steering wheel nervously. He looks at his phone when he shouldn't. Almost misses the turn. Back at the grocery shop, the man is still standing there. He finally steps inside. The owner asks quietly, "Is it true?" The man shrugs. "I think so. Not certainty. Just wait." A refrigerator hums loudly in the corner, louder than usual. The fluorescent lights flicker once. The television in the shop shows a procession of officials walking into a building. No commentary. Just footsteps. The owner reaches for the remote, then stops. He leaves it on. Somewhere across the city, someone begins printing black banners. The ink smells sharp. The machine whirs. The letters come out bold and undeniable. But even bold letters cannot answer every question. In a small bedroom, a child asks his mother why everyone looks worried. She says it's nothing, just news. But she holds him a little tighter when she turns off the light. In another part of the city, A group of young men laugh too loudly in the street, trying to sound unaffected. Their laughter fades quickly. They check their phones too. The man outside the grocery store finishes his purchase. Bread, water, nothing unusual. He steps back onto the sidewalk. The night feels the same temperature. The streetlight still flickers. His phone buzzes again. He doesn't check it immediately. He looks down the street first, as if something visible might confirm what the screen keeps insisting. There is only pavement, closed shutters, a sky that looks almost calm. He finally unlocks the phone. The headline is still there, unchanged. He stares at it for a long moment. Then the screen dims, and he keeps standing there, as if waiting for it to say something different. Night falls. The city stays lit. Windows glow one by one, small squares of yellow and white scattered across the dark like quiet witnesses. From far away, Tehran almost looks peaceful, almost untouched. Up close, it feels different. A television flickers in a third-floor apartment. The volume is barely audible. The anchor's mouth moves, but the words dissolve into the hum of electricity. On the coffee table, a remote lies face down. No one reaches for it. In the kitchen, a kettle whistles too long before someone remembers to turn it off. Steam fills the room. No one speaks. Outside, the streetlights hold their steady glow. A stray dog crosses the road and pauses in the middle, as if listening. The air is cool, not cold, just thin. A curtain shifts in an open window. Then stillness again. On a rooftop, laundry left out from the afternoon sways gently in the wind. A shirt slips from its clip and falls silently to the floor. No one notices. In a government building downtown, lights remain on in a single office long past midnight. Papers are stacked neatly on a desk. A chair pushed back slightly, as if someone stood up in a hurry and has not returned. The hallway outside is empty. At a gas station on the edge of the city, a man fills his tank slowly. He watches the numbers climb. He doesn't look at his phone this time. He stares at the reflection of the fluorescent lights on the metal of his car. The pump clicks. He doesn't move for a second. Then he does. In a small bedroom, a teenager lies awake, phone screen illuminating his face. The headline has not changed. He scrolls past it, then scrolls back up. He takes a screenshot, though he doesn't know why. The battery drops to 5%. He doesn't plug it in. Across town, an elderly woman sits on the edge of her bed, with prayer beads in her hand. Her lips move softly. Her eyes are open. The television in the other room continues speaking to no one. The beads slip through her fingers, one by one. On a quiet corner, the grocery shop is fully closed now. The metal shutter reflects the streetlight in dull streaks. A piece of paper taped to the door reads, "Closed tomorrow." The handwriting is rushed. A breeze pulls at the edges of the paper. It flutters, stops. At a hospital, a nurse walks down a dim corridor. The floor shines under white light. Her footsteps echo softly. In one room, a television is mounted high in the corner, playing the same footage on repeat. Smoke rising, lights flashing. A patient turns his head away from the screen. In an apartment facing the skyline, a man stands at the window. He can no longer see where the smoke was. The sky has swallowed it. The city lights blink steadily, indifferent. He presses his palm against the glass. It's cold. A notification buzzes on the table behind him. He doesn't turn around. Somewhere, a car alarm starts again. No one rushes to silence it. In a narrow alley, two cats dart between trash bins. A door slams above them. A light switches off. One by one, windows darken. Not all of them. A television studio still glows bright under artificial light. The camera pulls back slowly, revealing empty chairs beyond the frame. The anchor lowers his papers. The broadcast continues anyway. In a child's room, a toy car lies abandoned on the floor. The child is asleep now, one hand curled around a blanket. The television in the living room has finally been turned off. The silence feels heavier without it. On the outskirts of the city, headlights move along a highway. Steady, continuous. Cars traveling somewhere or away from somewhere. No one waves. No one stops. A balcony door creaks open. A man steps outside and looks up. The stars are faint but visible. He searches the sky as if it might answer something. It doesn't. He stays there for a long time, then goes back inside. In a dim office, a portrait remains hanging on the wall. The room is empty. The lights hum overhead. The clock ticks. No one adjusts the frame. Not yet. The city breathes quietly. A refrigerator hums. A radiator clicks. A phone lights up on a bedside table, screen glowing in the dark before fading again. Night deepens. The streets are not empty, but they feel paused. Above the skyline, the moon drifts behind a thin cloud. The lights stay on, and in countless rooms across the city, people lie awake in the dark, staring at ceilings, at screens, at nothing at all. No one knows who tomorrow will call by name.